Hello, everyone. Picture this. You are one of the most recognizable faces in fashion. You have fronted campaigns for Lancôme, walked for Prada, and opened shows for Givenchy. You have the kind of career other models dream about, and then, one day, you walk away. No drama, no breakdown. Just a quiet exit into the mountains, into silence, into yourself. That was Daria Werbowy. She was too thoughtful for fame, too restless for repetition, too real for an industry built on illusion. While others clung to the spotlight, Daria lit a match and watched it burn out on her own terms. So who was this woman who had it all and wanted none of it? And why did she disappear when the world was still applauding? This is not a story of fashion. It is a story of escape. Daria Werbowy was born in Krakow, Poland, in 1983 into a world that would never hold her for long. When she was 3, her family fled the political and economic instability of communist Poland and immigrated to Canada. The move was not glamorous. It was not hopeful in the way immigrant stories are often framed. It was cold, unfamiliar, necessary. The Werbowy family settled in the suburbs of Toronto, carrying with them the weight of starting over. Daria was not the kind of child who blended in. She grew tall early, her limbs too long, her eyes too sharp, her presence too intense for the quiet rhythm of suburban life. She was quiet, but not shy. She watched people, measured them. She did not speak unless it meant something, and often it did. There was no glimmer of modeling in her early years. She loved the outdoors more than mirrors. She was the kind of girl who would climb trees barefoot and vanish into fields for hours. She was drawn to solitude, to silence, to the parts of the world that did not require her to smile. But life, as always, had other plans. At 14, a family friend mentioned that she looked like someone who belonged on a magazine cover. Daria shrugged. She was more interested in art, in rebellion, in anything that felt real. But when an agency approached her, she agreed not out of ambition, but curiosity. What would happen if she said yes? Her early attempts at modeling were uneven. She was too raw, too unconventional. Agencies liked her look, but they did not know where to place her. She was not commercial enough for catalogs, not glamorous enough for mainstream fashion. She was something else and the world had not caught up to it yet. Still, she kept showing up. Not because she wanted the fame, but because something in her was drawn to the challenge. She was not trying to be seen. She was trying to survive her own restlessness. And modeling, for all its absurdity, gave her a way to move to get out of the suburbs, out of herself, out of the smallness she feared would swallow her whole. By the time she was 17, she had already signed with major agencies, but she still felt like an outsider in the industry, in her own skin, in the idea of beauty that the world tried to hang on her face. And maybe that was the first quiet rebellion. Daria Werbowy would become one of fashion's most iconic faces, without ever fully belonging to the image it projected. Daria Werbowy did not fall into fashion. She was pulled into it like a tide, slowly at first, then with sudden force. In her teens, she moved through agencies, from minor test shoots to local jobs in Toronto, never quite convinced this world was hers. She had no obsession with clothes. She wore thrifted denim and let her hair do what it wanted. And yet, there was something in her, a gaze, a presence that camera lenses kept returning to. The industry, always hunting for its next revelation, began to hover. Still, the path was not smooth. Her first trip to New York was uneventful. She walked into casting offices with portfolios and left with silence. Too angular, too tall, too serious. Her look was hard to categorize, and in fashion, that often means you are sent home. She nearly quit. She thought about going back to school. thought about disappearing before she had even arrived. Then came the accident. Just as she was gaining traction, Daria suffered a serious sailing injury. Yes, sailing. She had grown up around boats, the sea always calling louder than the city. She broke her leg badly and was sidelined from modeling for months. Some would have seen it as a setback, but for Daria, it was clarity. She realized she did not miss the industry, not the fittings, the pressure, the performative femininity. What she missed, if anything, was the stillness of being away from it. But the industry came back for her. In 2003, she made her European debut. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Suddenly, everything aligned. The world was tired of plastic perfection. It wanted edge. It wanted authenticity. It wanted the kind of beauty that came with distance. And Daria had that not as a performance, but as a personality. She walked for Prada. She became a muse for Nicolas Ghesquière at Balenciaga. Her first season in Paris, she walked over 40 shows. It was not a debut. It was a takeover. Photographers fell in love with her. Stephen Maisel, Mario Testino, Inez and Villeneuve, they all saw it. That mix of strength and absence, that ability to exist inside the frame without needing to fill it. Daria did not pose. She inhabited space. Her face did not beg for attention. It held it in a chokehold of restraint. Then came the Lancôme contract. In an industry where commercial contracts often mark the end of credibility, Daria made it look like art. She became the face of the brand, not because she conformed to their softness, but because she redefined it. Her campaigns were elegant, sure, but also elusive. She was beautiful in the way fog is beautiful, never fully graspable, always just out of reach. And yet, behind the magazine covers and billboards, Daria was already pulling away. She hated interviews. She hated red carpets. She hated being watched for being beautiful. Modeling gave her freedom, the money, the travel, the escape. But it also took something. It turned her into an idea, a symbol, and symbols, by definition, are no longer allowed to be human. Her entry into fashion was not about arrival. It was about negotiation. What part of herself would she keep? What part would she sell? What would she lose just to survive in a business that rewarded detachment and punished sincerity? She never had an answer, but she kept walking fiercely, quietly, always just one step from disappearing. For a few years, Daria Werbowy was everywhere, and yet she never felt overexposed. That was her power. At the height of her career, when most supermodels chased fame like oxygen, Daria wore her success like an oversized coat casually, distantly, like something she could take off at any moment. She became the industry's cool obsession. Not hot, not flashy. Cool in the purest sense of the word. She opened shows for Chanel, Dior, Balenciaga. She graced over 50 international Vogue covers. But none of it ever seemed to define her. Daria never played the game. She hovered above it. Designers loved her because she could morph without ever losing herself. She could walk for Tom Ford's dangerous sensuality, then shift into Jill Sanders' intellectual minimalism the next day. Her face absorbed any concept, but never disappeared into it. She remained present, unmoved, sharp as bone. And then there were the campaigns: Prada, Celine, Yves Saint Laurent, Versace. She became the silent thread running through fashion's early 2000s mood, detached, intelligent, slightly unknowable. While others relied on performative glamour, Daria made neutrality powerful. She could say more with a glance than others could with a scream. But her golden era was not just about work. It was about resistance, her refusal to give in to the myth of the supermodel. She lived alone, she traveled alone. She kept her circle small and her voice even smaller. She turned down parties, avoided fashion weeks unless required, never chased celebrity, never became a product. She preferred mountains to runways, preferred sailing to selfies, at her peak, while other models were strategizing brand deals. Daria was backpacking through South America with a film camera and a notebook. She was making money. Yes. But she was also collecting distance from the lights, from the industry, from the idea that success must be loud. And still, the industry kept calling. Because when someone does not beg for attention, they often become the one thing fashion cannot manufacture: mystery. Daria Werbowy became an icon not by chasing relevance, but by making absence desirable. Her golden era did not shine. It glowed cold, steady, quietly untouchable. In an industry obsessed with narrative, Daria Werbowy refused to give one. While the world asked her to define herself as muse, as icon, as symbol, she responded with silence. And that silence became her rebellion. She did not chase headlines. She did not cultivate a persona. She did not turn herself into a brand. Daria modeled exquisitely, intelligently, and then disappeared. Again and again. At the height of her success, she would vanish for months, sometimes years, only to reappear when the work mattered. She treated fashion not like a lifestyle, but like a job, one she could clock out of. What made her different was not just what she brought to the camera, it was what she refused behind it. She never joined the wave of models turning into influencers. She did not monetize her personal life. She did not sell you a dream version of herself. She gave you only what she chose. And she made you feel lucky to see even that. She spoke openly about her discomfort with fame, about her battles with addiction, about how the industry rewarded disconnection, and how she learned to protect herself by staying detached. Most models perform confidence. Daria spoke of fragility, of depression, of the toll it took to be a vessel for other people's fantasies. She did not hide her struggles. She named them, but never let them define her. She once said, "I did not want to be a model. I wanted to be free." That sentence alone separated her from most. Freedom was not a metaphor to her. It was a daily practice. Saying no, stepping away, letting go. And in a business that prizes conformity to beauty, to pace, to demand, Daria's refusal to be shaped made her unforgettable. She kept her look natural, rarely wore makeup off-set. She let her body age without fear. She walked away from million-dollar contracts simply because they asked for too much of her soul. She was one of the few who reminded fashion that it was supposed to be about art, not addiction to visibility. She did not play the icon. She simply lived with integrity. And in doing so, she became the rarest thing in the industry, a woman who could survive it without being swallowed. Daria Werbowy did not need to scream to be heard. She defied the system by living on her own terms in the system. Unable to replace her, quietly respected her for it. There was no tabloid moment, no meltdown on the runway, no public feud or scandal to mark Daria Werbowy's withdrawal. Her fall was private, almost invisible. But that did not make it less real. She began disappearing from the spotlight not with a bang, but with pauses, longer breaks between seasons, fewer campaigns, more time in remote places where no one cared what she looked like. At first, it seemed like a choice, and in some ways, it was. But beneath the surface was fatigue, the kind that comes from being watched too long, from carrying an image that never really belonged to you. She spoke in interviews rarely, cautiously about her inner world, about addiction, about her struggle to feel real inside a business built on illusion. She talked about the isolation of modeling, the way it disconnects you from your own face, your own voice, your own self. In 2016, she left fashion almost entirely. No farewell post, no final cover. She just stopped, moved into the mountains, lived off the grid, photographed the world on her own terms, with no audience in mind. It was not a retirement. It was a reclamation. The industry whispered, "Where is Daria?" Fans speculated. Was she okay? Would she come back? But Daria never played into the narrative. She let the silence speak for itself. There was one last echo. In 2023, nearly a decade later, she returned briefly for a campaign with Phoebe Philo, the designer she once called a kindred spirit. The shoot was spare, quiet. Just her and the clothes and a stillness that felt like truth. It was not a comeback. It was a visit, a reminder. She was still here, still powerful, still hers. But even that appearance felt like a ghost. She came, she stood, she vanished again. Daria Werbowy's withdrawal was not about failure. It was about survival. She saw what the industry does to women who do not conform. And instead of burning out, she quietly slipped away before the flames could catch her. She chose wilderness over runways, solitude over applause. She chose herself. And maybe that is the most radical thing a supermodel can do. Daria Werbowy never tried to become a legend. She tried, instead, to become invisible. But that is precisely why she remains unforgettable. Long after she walked her last runway, her presence still echoes in editorials, in campaign mood boards, in the quiet ache of those who remember what fashion felt like when she was in it. Her face, angular, serene, unknowable, still appears like a ghost in conversations about beauty. But her true legacy is not her image. It is her absence. In leaving fashion, Daria gave other models permission to imagine a different ending. A life outside the lens. A world where beauty does not come at the cost of selfhood. She did not stage a comeback. She did not sell nostalgia. She did not capitalize on the memory of her prime. She simply vanished, and in doing so, preserved her power. She reminded us that escape is not failure, that walking away can be the most powerful move of all, and that maybe, just maybe, you do not have to stay visible to leave a mark. Daria Werbowy is not gone. She is just somewhere we cannot follow.